Get him, Winston. Get him.
All information presented in the expert interview series is meant for informational and educational purposes only and is not meant to replace a visit to your vet. So we are here. Oh, what happened there?
Because you're recording.
Okay. We're here today with Rhiannon, a vet tech from Texas, and we're just going to ask a few questions. This is part of our expert interview series for the YouTube channel Healers and Herders. So Rhiannon, what motivated you to become a vet tech?
So it kind of landed in my lap. I had originally gone to school for horse training and nutrition and management and that sort of thing. And I'd gone back to my hometown and had gone back to the clinic I originally worked in high school. And they moved me up to restraining in rooms and helping the doctor a little bit more. And I just fell in love with it. And so I stopped going to school for what I was originally going for and became a technician instead. So
Awesome.
It kind of landed in my lap and figured it was kind of meant to be. So here we are almost 8 years later. So
okay,
it's been a fun journey.
I bet. It sounds like it. I actually grew up on a farm, so horses and horse training is quite a feat to go through. Okay, so you've been a vet tech for about 8 years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where did you study?
So a lot of my knowledge is from on the job. So in Montana, we are called certified veterinary assistants. Down here in Texas, I have my certification as an assistant, but I'm essentially a technician. That's what my job is. I do a technician's job, but I do not have the licensing right now. Okay. That is a plan in the works. My job schedule has not allowed me to be able to go to school to get all the formal training, but I'm trained under doctors. Everything I do is supervised under a doctor. So that's kind of what I do. There's a ton of on-the-job trained technicians across the country. Our job description just kind of changes depending on what state you are. I wasn't allowed to do a lot of stuff in Montana because of the regulation. So a certified technician had to do that. Down here in Texas, it's not as regulated. So I'm allowed to monitor anesthesia. I'm allowed to give vaccines. I'm allowed to do more than just restraining. So I do have the job of a technician, but my only certification is as an assistant. So I've done a lot of work. I worked in a couple different clinics, so it's been kind of cool to work under several different doctors and learn their way of doing it and the knowledge that comes with them as a vet. So it's been interesting.
Okay. All right. How about, do you own any pets of your own?
I do. I have quite the zoo. I have 6 horses on my property right now, and I have 4 dogs. I've got 3 healers of my own, and I have a border collie as well. And my border collie is a foster failure. She came from the clinic I had worked for in Montana and was supposed to be put down, and I couldn't do it. So I took her home, and my boyfriend fell in love with her, and so here we are. She's now 9, and I got her when she was 4.5. So she kind of foster failed with me. So it's been it's nice to have the diversity there. She's very much so different than my healers. So
oh, for sure.
I have quite the circus, it seems like, most days.
How do you handle 3 healers? I have 1 and he is just insane.
So I have one that I got in 2012. He came from the shelter, and he was older. They told me 3, but now we're wondering if he wasn't more 5 or 6. So we estimate his age now to be about 13. So he's slowed down. He's old and doesn't play as often. And then I have one that I got from a breeder that she's very high strung. She has a huge prey drive. She wants to work. She was amazing on cows when I had the opportunity to work her on cows as a young pup. At 8 weeks old, she was hanging off the tails of roping steers. She's got a major drive. So she's a challenge because I don't have cows. So she wants to work the horses. And that's a big no-no in my book.
Right.
Um, and then I have a puppy. He's not a puppy. He's a year and a half. But he is very high energy. So thankfully, him and the high prey drive dog wear each other out. So it helps
That's
a
good.
bunch. But I have 6 acres, so they run and play as soon as I'm home. They run my entire lunch break. They're just tons of energy, tons of toys, mental stimulation for them to do. That's the only way I can keep them from being destructive. But thankfully, I don't have anything that's destructive. So it's been kind
That's
of nice.
good. That's good. We actually rescued a puppy from a family in St. Charles, it was here in Missouri,
So
and he had been not well socialized, so he can be very I don't want to say aggressive. He's not aggressive. Reactive is a good
yeah,
word. He's very
yeah.
reactive towards people, and he is also still a puppy, so he is so excitable. And I am sad to say that we have lost a chair or two to him. Um,
I lost a
he,
couch to this puppy. He came to me from a breeder. I actually drove 15 hours for him because he looked like my old guy, and so I drove 15 hours for him, and he was very unsocialized. He was 15 weeks old, and if you touched him, he screamed because he just
oh
didn't
no.
didn't have any of the human reaction.
Oh,
So thankfully, I work at a vet clinic, so he went to work with me every day for
nice.
probably 3 months. So he got tons of socialization from the techs, the doctors. I take him up to visit clients. Now he's everybody's best friend.
That's
So it
fantastic.
took a lot of work, but yeah, I understand the reactiveness. The first night I had him, he screamed when you touched him. It was
Yeah.
mortifying, but he did destroy a couple couches and I think a kitchen chair in his first like 6 months. But thankfully, his chewing has subsided, so
Yes, yes.
it's been good.
All right, well, let's move into some of the questions that I know that the viewers are looking forward to seeing answers to. Um, so I've noticed a couple of posts where people have taken their animals, their dogs, to the vet for the red eyelid across the eyes.
Okay,
So let's talk about the third eyelid. What is it and what does it look like?
so it's exactly what it is. It's a third eyelid. You'll see the red in the corner of the eye. Basically, it's there to help protect the eye. So if you see it standing up more coming across the actual eye, usually there's irritation in there. There could be a foreign object in there. Sometimes it is a sign of them not feeling well. Usually you see that more in cats, but sometimes in dogs it'll be the same way. So it's basically it's a protectant to go with it. Usually if they have what they call a cherry eye, that's where the third eyelid has been prolapsed, which means it stays out unless you put it back.
Oh my.
The doctors, they will do a cherry eye surgery. Either they remove it completely or they actually put it back in its position. Sometimes it'll reprolapse, but sometimes it'll stay there. So if you're seeing that, generally they've been somewhere dusty, um, or they're not feeling well. But usually there's a lot of other symptoms that go with them not feeling well if the eyelid is coming across the eye.
Okay. At what point do our viewers need to decide to see a vet if they see that?
So if you're having a dog that's lethargic, not wanting to eat, doesn't seem to be acting normal, vomiting, anything that's really out of the ordinary, refusing food. They're usually, if they have the third eyelid come across their eye, they're probably very dehydrated. So if they're not drinking, that sort of thing, anything that's really abnormal and it's gone on more than like a few hours or a day, that's usually when you should probably start taking your dog to the vet.
Okay.
It's better to be safe than sorry. So, it doesn't hurt to go in and have an exam done on your dog. You never know what you're going to find just on a simple exam that they brought in for something. So that's kind of usually our rule of thumb. Several clinics that I've worked in, that if they're just not acting right for more than a day or so, but definitely if you see the third eyelid come across and it's staying up, generally that becomes a worry, whether it's got an object in it. I've seen sticks get pulled out of eyes.
Oh
I've
my.
seen cheatgrass get pulled out of eyes. Rocks all sorts of stuff. So if that stays up for longer than just a couple hours, I would definitely be taking them in. Eyes are something you don't want to mess with. You don't want to wait on that. So, generally that's something we tell them, okay, if it's been like this for a couple hours, it's not going down, you definitely need to bring them in. Because it can scratch the eyelid and create several other problems on top of just having that third eyelid across the eye.
Okay. All right. Well, that is good to know. And that is terrifying to think that sticks and rocks have been pulled out of eyes.
Yeah, scary. Definitely scary.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so what do you guys see most commonly for healers and herding breeds when they come into the vet? What do they typically come in for?
Generally, they come in for wellness exams. Healers are generally a pretty healthy breed, to be honest with you. We don't see them for a lot of sicknesses. Occasionally, we'll see a dog that they ate something they shouldn't have, or someone fed them a table scrap that didn't agree with them. That's kind of all across the board, but sometimes we'll see healers for that. Usually, and I'm talking from my experience too, kicked by horses, kicked by cows, ran over. A lot of those things that kind of go back to that prey drive that I talked about earlier. They get themselves into trouble when they really shouldn't.
Right.
My healer with the prey drive, she's been kicked by a horse 4 times.
Oh, no.
Her last time she ended up with stitches across her eye and she lost one of her canine teeth. And it's a fluke deal. I mean, she's been through rigorous training. We've tried the shock collars. We've tried going to a trainer, and sometimes it just happens. I don't fault anybody for ever having that happen. They're accidents. And so, that's usually what we see a healer for. We see a lot of wellness exams. Healers tend to be the healthiest. We just had one at the clinic that I work at now. We just euthanized her last year, but she was 19. So they generally live good, long lives of being pretty healthy. So
Absolutely. I actually looked it up earlier, and the longest living dog on record is a blue healer for almost 30 years.
Crazy.
It's 29 and a half years. Yes, it's insane. Now, you mentioned something about them eating things that they're not supposed to. And we all know that healers are particularly mouthy breeds. They do like to chew on everything. Mine eats everything. He tries to eat plastic, he eats rocks, he eats paper, he eats sticks. So I guess another question that I want to ask is, how and where do blockages occur, like intestinal blockages and such? How does that happen? Where do they occur? And what are the symptoms?
So most blockages are in the stomach or somewhere along the intestines. We don't really see any that are like more popular than others where they've blocked. It just kind of where the GI tract can't pass it anymore. Usually the connection between the small intestine and the large intestine, that's a common place for it to get stuck. But like I said, it can happen anywhere from the stomach all the way through the GI tract. Usually once it's in the colon, you're pretty set free to go. If they pushed it that far, then they're going to pass it the rest of the way. We don't actually see a lot of healers. We saw a puppy like a year ago for one. He had ingested part of a toy, and I believe his was early on in the intestine somewhere. But they do like to eat things they're not supposed to. Your biggest worry is that they eat sticks. Those can always puncture intestines, so that makes it an even harder thing to fix. Rocks, I've seen so many rocks. We had one when I worked in Montana that had been opened up 6 times for rocks.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was a different breed, but it's common everywhere.
Right.
So with that, you're looking for vomiting. They're not wanting to eat. With healers, I'm not wanting to eat. That's always a concern.
Right.
I don't know if it's weird, but I eat like it's going out of style.
Yes.
So usually they'll have stools for a little while, like a day or two, and then nothing. So if you're seeing them vomit and they're not having any bowel movements, then that's a concern that there may be something blocked. Usually they'll get really lethargic. They can't keep even water down. So those are things that you want to be looking for that could lead to a blockage. If you have a dog that eats everything, and he's a known chewer, knows he eats things he's not supposed to, that's something mentioned to your vet. If they're vomiting, just tell them, look, I know he eats toys. If this toy is missing or a part of this toy is missing, then that's a good thing to tell your vet, because then your vet can go, okay, so let's rule out a blockage before we rule out a GI.
Right.
And we do that all the time. We love it when owners tell us that, because that helps us do our job better.
Sure.
My pup was in, I want to say about 4 months ago, because I thought he had eaten something. One of his toys was MIA, and he didn't want to eat, and he had vomited like 4 times. So we took him in to x-rays. Of course, there was nothing in there, but it was better to be safe than sorry. So those are the main things. Some dogs will vomit up a green discharge. Some do, some don't. That usually tells you that there's something in there. I've been in the field long enough, I can smell them. They have a kind of a sour smell. So usually I can smell them and go, I think this dog's blocked. And I've been right about 90% of the time. So just things to look at that are abnormal. And that goes back to, you can even see with the third eyelid. Sometimes they will come up that much if they are sick. With the blockages, it makes them sick. It makes them sick very quickly, because nothing is passing and that intestine is getting angrier and angrier. So they usually rapidly go down instead of just prolonged for months and months and months. It's within hours, they go from decent to really lethargic. So those are the things you just need to watch for. And if you know he's chewing on something, take it away from them and give them something they're allowed to chew on.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. We see a lot of rope toys. We see a lot of those. Those are called linear foreign bodies, because they basically accordion the intestines. So if they get a piece of string off and it goes through the intestine but then stops, it sucks all those intestines together, which that can be a huge problem, and they are a pain to fix, because usually it ends up cutting into the intestine that we have to go and fix several spots. But bones, balls, rocks, sticks, pretty much anything they can chew on, they can get a big piece off of. They can end up with a blockage. Most pass them okay, but you seeing those symptoms, then that's definitely something I would be going to the vet to have checked.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I know my dog, he chews on everything. And I don't always know that he's chewing on something that he shouldn't.
Yeah, they're kind of sneaky. And my newt is very sneaky. He goes and lays behind the couch, or he's in the bedroom when he's not supposed to be. And then that's when we're like, okay, where are you? What are you doing that you're not supposed to be doing?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So there's a lot of disagreement in the healer community and just the dog community at large regarding the best diet for dogs. Do you recommend the raw diet for dogs? And if so, what should be included in that?
We don't really recommend the raw diet, mostly because people have not educated them enough to make it balanced. So dogs need a certain level of vitamins. They need a certain level of minerals. They need a very balanced diet between carbohydrates and your protein and everything like that. So unfortunately, people think with raw, they're like, oh, well, I'll just throw them a slab of chicken and a couple eggs and maybe some peas and call it good. That's not a balanced diet. The people that do it right, they talk to a nutritionist. They get a line figured out, a certified nutritionist, let me say that, a certified nutritionist that knows what they're talking about. We don't recommend it. I personally don't recommend it at all. My dogs are on kibble. They are on Hill's Science Diet food. Nothing spectacular, but it's a high quality food. Their ingredients are high quality. So that's what we do. And my dogs look fantastic. They always stay nice and fit and trim, and they look great. Usually what we don't recommend just Hills like most people think. We don't get kickbacks from Hills.
Right.
Except for maybe a pin or two or something like that. We, at the clinic I work in now, we carry Royal Canin and we carry Hills. So those two are really good brands to look for just because they have more science behind the food. They're not just into marketing and so people see it. Purina is another one that's not bad. Eukanuba is not bad. Purina, if you go like Purina 1 and higher, that's where the quality of the ingredients are better. So if you look at a package and it says first ingredient, that's meat before it's been dehydrated to turn into kibble. So that's before they suck all the water out of it. So by the time it actually becomes part of the dog food, it's probably 10th or 11th down at the bottom of the list.
Oh,
So
wow.
really you're not getting made with chicken or, it's not the top number one ingredient anymore. So that's how the food companies kind of get you. Blue Buffalo is one of those that they have spent more in marketing than they have in science. So that's what they tell you. Well, that's the first ingredient is meat. Well, that's before it's dehydrated. So yes, it's in there, but it's not in there up high like it should be. People are scared of byproducts and meals. Well, unfortunately, though, they misunderstand what that means. So that's the liver, the heart, things that are high packed in protein, that they're not chicken feet, they're not beaks, they're the high protein that you really, that's good for your dog. It's not all the bad stuff that people say it is. The other thing that people are afraid of is grains. Grains are not bad for your dog. Corn's not bad for your dog. Grain-free is created a lot of issues with dilated cardiomyopathy. We don't see it hugely in healers, but it is out there. It can happen with grain-free.
What is that?
It is where the heart gets enlarged. I've seen dogs that are young, year-old, 2 years old, that pass away from it because the grain-free doesn't have what they need in their body. So as best you can, unless you're diagnosed with major grain allergies, then start looking at grain-free diets. Talk with your vet, talk with a nutritionist, and get on one that is well balanced. Royal Canin has one. Sorry, hang on. Stop it. I didn't let my dogs go before I started. So they're running hot laps in my house. So they are, vets have it. I know Royal Canin has a grain-free diet. Usually dogs are more apt to be allergic to the protein versus the grain. So they have, I know Hills and Royal Canin both have a hydrolyzed protein. I know Purina for Professionals has a protein that works for dogs that are allergic to everything under the sun. So that's something that can be looked into if your dog does have a food allergy versus just going to grain-free because that's what everybody says. So that's mainly what we recommend is a good quality diet. It doesn't have to be a $50 bag of food. You can go to a boutique store and get a junk food and still pay $50, $60 a bag. Right. Hills, I pay I don't get a discount. I think I pay $45 or $50 for a 30-pound bag. And, my dogs are high energy, so my dogs get fed more. My puppy, he's on 5 cups of food a day.
Whoa, that's so much.
My couch all day long, he's on a cup and a half of food a day.
Right.
So, that's the other thing that people don't understand is that it's calories in versus calories out. So if you have an overweight dog, you can always cut back on the calories they're intaking to be able to lose weight or that sort of thing. But I just know what works for my dogs. I've played with it. I've increased, I've decreased, and that's what I found works. He gets a ton of food and the old guy doesn't get as much, but that's what fills him. And he doesn't beg for food or anything like that, except for the occasional table scrap, because that's my dogs. My dogs like to beg. They don't get very much from me, usually just like a chip, maybe like a tortilla chip, or I give them a bone later or something. I don't feed a ton of food to my dogs. I see too many GI upsets to do that. So, but yeah, so like I said, with having a quality food, stay away from like Alpo, Pedigree, what's the other one? O'Roy. A lot of those, they just don't have the quality there. They have more dyes in their food than anything. There's a thing that goes around, they call it O'Roy syndrome. So we're no, it's a dog that, not gaining any weight. They look like crap. Their coats are crap. And usually it's just because of the food. So look for that instead of what's the best ingredient on the top of it. The other little tidbit I'll share is if you look at an AFCO statement on a dog food bag, and look at it and see, and it'll tell you this is formulated for adult dogs, or this is formulated for all life stages. All life stages is they're targeting people from puppy to adult food. Puppies need a different certain amount of vitamins and minerals than an adult dog does. So you want to have them on a puppy food and then transition them to an adult food. You don't want to do in all life stages, because generally their mineral and vitamin intake is more along on the puppy side. So it stays higher in their bodies and the adult dogs just don't need it. So that's something to always look for. Usually they'll say on there if it's been done in feed trials, that sort of thing. That's the best thing to look at on your dog food bag. Aside from just the ingredients. Most of the companies you can call and they can tell you basically anything you want to know about the dog food. Hills and Royal Canin are both like that. You can call them and ask them any question about their food, their guaranteed analysis, feeding trials, anything like that, and they will tell you. Some companies, they won't give you any information. They just tell you it's all in the bag. But those are things, if you have other questions about your food, that's the best way to do it. You have concerns, definitely talk to your vet. No, we're not nutritionists, but we deal with nutrition day in and day out. There's several different diets that you can try, but they can point you in the right direction. There's some dogs that can't handle high fat. There's some that can't handle beef. My dogs cannot have beef. It makes them very gassy. They have upset stomachs. They vomit more. On a chicken diet, they do just fine. So you just kind of got to play with it and see. But if you have any questions, that's the best thing to do is talk to your vet, see what they would recommend you start with, and then you can play with it from there.
That's very interesting that your dogs have issues with beef. I have a beagle that actually has an allergy to chicken. And anytime she eats chicken, specifically dehydrated chicken, she becomes very itchy. She starts coughing and sneezing. Like it's a full-on allergy.
Yeah.
It's insane. But then my healer and my corgi, both very energetic dogs, they will eat anything.
Yeah. Well, they'll eat it, but it's not very good for the rest of us in the house. So,
right.
Keeping them on the chicken, that's what keeps them happy. So that's what I go with. And, if I need to change it up, I can put them on a different type of protein, but I usually just keep it on the chicken and they do well on it. So that's what they say on.
That's good. That's good. You mentioned something about not feeding your dogs a lot of people food. I've seen multiple comments in the groups and communities. A lot of people feed human food to their animals for treats. So what is okay and what isn't? I know there are a lot of people who eat carrots and strawberries and broccoli. What can they have and what can they not have?
So like what you mentioned, those are all pretty safe to give. Carrots, green beans, those are good things. If you don't feel like your dog's getting enough, you can add a little bit extra to that. My grandmother for years gave carrots to her dogs, and that's what they love. They would prefer those over a dog bone. A little bit healthier for them. You can do that. Things to stay away from: grapes, avocados, oranges can be upsetting to them. There is a website with ASPCA that actually lists things that your dog can have and your dog can't have, what's poisonous to them, and that sort of thing. That'd be a good thing for any dog owner to check out, just so that way they know. You'd be surprised. I have been a tech for years. I didn't know avocados were bad for dogs. I just had never come across that before.
Right.
Being northern state, I never really thought about it. Of course, I didn't feed my dogs any of that. But then down here where it's pretty popular having, it's a part of pretty much everybody's meal down here, it shocked me to find out that they do cause GI upset to dogs. So that's something to just be conscious of. The best way to do it is not to give them human food the best you can. It helps bring down the GI issues, especially coming up now on Thanksgiving. Ham is not good for your dogs. It's very high in salt. and dogs can't process those types of meat as well as most people think they can. We see a ton of pancreatitis around this time of year just because people are feeding off the table and dogs just can't handle it. So that's something to be cautious of. My dogs occasionally get a little piece of bread or a tortilla chip or something that's pretty bland. That's what they get. And they think it's the greatest thing in the world because they hardly ever get it. So they think it's fantastic.
Right.
So that's just to be cautious. And if you have any concerns about that, that's something that you can refer back to that website. Of course, I had it written down, but I left it at work. Fortunately, I cleaned out my pockets and I left it there. But it's something we go by at work. So we use that to see if it's something that's abnormal that we don't normally see. We refer to that website as well. So I think it's AP or aspca.org. And then you can find it on there from there. And it's a list of everything that's poisonous and what's good and what you just shouldn't feed and that sort of thing. So that'd be something good for pretty much any pet owner to look into to make sure that what they're giving their dog is safe.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you mentioned the high sodium and pancreatitis. Are those two linked? Like high sodium causes the pancreatitis?
Not always. We see it a lot just with dogs that get something that doesn't agree. It inflames the pancreas and it turns into pancreatitis. So we try to make sure that that doesn't happen. Thanksgiving time is usually our worst time, like the day after Thanksgiving. Normally, most clinics probably just don't even book for it because they get calls all day long. That's usually our busiest day is because everyone fed something Thursday night, Friday morning, their dog's vomiting and having diarrhea. So not all GI cases turn into pancreatitis, but they can, and it is scary. I have seen animals pass from it because you can't get the levels back down. You can't get the pancreas less inflamed. So that's something to keep in mind, that table scraps aren't the best, especially at Thanksgiving time.
Okay, good to know. One final question for you. In terms of treats, like actual dog treats, what do we need to look for to determine if it is a healthy treat for our dog or if it's really not? Like, what are the high quality treats versus the ones that maybe we should avoid?
So you can still look at brands. I, of course, am for everything that's made in the United States. That rules out a lot of those, things from China that have metal in them or dyed things. And I have seen metal come out of rawhide bones.
Oh my God.
Made in China. Yes. So I always look for made in USA. I look for things like if you are going to feed a rawhide, only give it when it's monitored. So if you're sitting watching TV and they're laying in front of you chewing on a rawhide, you can give that to them, but not something that I would highly recommend all the time. I personally use the Himalayan yak chews. That my dogs love them. They think they're the greatest thing ever. And then when they get down to little itty bitty pieces where most people throw away, you can put them in the microwave and actually like blow them up for like 5-10 seconds. And it turns them into crispy little chews and they just break all apart. So you don't have to worry about them chewing on an itty bitty tiny little piece of rawhide. My dogs love them. They don't get them all the time, but they love them. Not everybody will recommend like milk bones and stuff like that. My dogs get milk bones. It's the best thing that I can give them for a treat that doesn't cost me an arm and a leg. I have 4 dogs. I'm being realistic. So I'm not saying every treat out there is bad, but it's something just to look at, look at the quality of the ingredients, and see, one treat here and there is not going to be a big deal. That's not the end of the world. But you just kind of limit on what you give, and generally you don't have too much of a GI issue if you do give a treat. But treats themselves, I don't worry about as long as they're getting a good balanced diet. Otherwise, I don't worry about them getting 1 or 2 treats here and there by something that's not, astronomically expensive or something like that. Right. My dogs don't get Hill's treats. They have a huge variety of Hill's treats out there. I like them. We use them in the clinic all the time, but that's not the biggest thing that we worry about. 1 or 2 is versus anything else. If your dog starts vomiting after a treat, that might be something that doesn't agree with them. So it would just kind of be something to watch.
Okay. All right, well, I think that concludes all of my questions for you today. Did you have anything else that you'd like to say to viewers?
No, I think your questions were really well rounded and, answered a lot of questions for people. And I definitely don't mind if there's questions down the road. If you want them answered, that's fine with me.
Okay.
But yeah, being a fellow healer owner, they're kind of a interesting breed.
They
The
so are.
the best thing you can do is give them obedience training, teach them commands. Even if you're in your yard 10, 15 minutes a night or a couple days a week, just doing leash training with them, that's enough of a mental stimulation that it keeps them from being destructive. We see so many dogs that, they say they misbehave, they're destructive, they're unsocialized. That's the biggest thing with healers I see is they are unsocialized. Or they tell me, well, they've been abused. Generally, dogs, those haven't been abused. It's been unsocialization. So my healer, he came from the shelter, but just from the behavioral training that I have had, I feel like he probably was abused. He's very reactive in aspect of you raise your voice, he snaps at you. That's just what he does.
Yes.
I've had him 8 years. Now I understand it, and he's gotten better with time. The puppy that I got, he was very reactive, but it was just doesn't understand. He was unsocialized in that aspect. So that's the difference that I really wish owners would understand is not every dog's abused. A lot of them are just unsocialized. They're great pets with you guys, but not always with us professionals. So that's something that to read up on and read the difference and see what you can think. And, most healers that we have come in, they're very one-person dogs. So They love their owner and they don't want us messing with them. We get around most of them really good. Once they have an understanding that everything's okay, we're not here to hurt them, they're usually okay. Right. Most healers are food motivated. So if we can make friends with them with treats, we will happily do that. That's my little blue healer. She's very much so my dog. And she freezes when I take her to the vet. You put her up on an exam table and she will sit there and let you do anything you want to her, but she's not moving because she's frozen in fear or something. Fear. I don't think it's really in fear. She's been around the vet clinic long enough. She's 8, so I don't think she's really here anymore. It's just that's what she does. She just freezes, but she doesn't want anybody but me really messing with her. And so that's something we roll with every time I have to take her in. Like she just had her dental 2 weeks ago when we pulled her canine tooth out. And so I was her technician and sedated and monitored through anesthesia and woke her up and everything. She's not mean, but she's my dog. So that's just something that you always roll with. And most owners really understand, especially with having the COVID stuff going on right now. Us taking them away from their owners, that has been the biggest challenge. So hopefully it's getting better as we've been on long enough, but definitely something that owners are understanding now that, their dogs do okay with us. It's just, they don't like us. We're not their favorite people in the world. Right. So,
it's so true. My healer is very much a one-owner dog. He is my dog. He really doesn't want anyone else messing with him or training him or talking to him or sometimes even looking at him. But he's definitely not been socialized properly from the time that he was a pup. We've only had him for about 6 months. And unfortunately, we got him right when COVID started. So what's really hard to do? Socialize him.
Yeah, it's so hard. And that's all these people that got puppies with COVID and we're seeing a lot of it where they've not been socialized when they're coming in for spays and neuters and stuff. And that's the biggest challenge is because it's just not available right now. Now we've kind of opened our doors a little bit at this clinic to where we're allowing people to come into the building. So we have offered, like right before our lunch or right before we close at night, bring them in for a happy visit. That's a great thing that you can recommend to a lot of people is take them into a vet clinic, call them and see if they will do happy visits. Come in, have a technician give them a treat or two. You can provide the treats if you want, so they eat them, and then go right back out the door. Doesn't cost anything, but it gets them socialized enough that they understand that not everything bad happens at a vet clinic. So that's a great way to do that. I've seen it work wonders with several different breeds to where they were fearful and biting when they came in the first time. And then 6 months later, now we are their best friend. So it's a great thing to definitely try, but that's a that's a good thing I would recommend for especially heeler owners that, they never leave the farm or anything like that. It'd be a good thing for them to try.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today. If I have any questions down the line, or if we want to do a second interview, are you open to that?
Yeah, definitely. Just let me know, and it'd be great. This has been fun. I was a little nervous to start this, but I think it turned out great.
You are not alone. You're actually my first expert interview. So
Oh,
the channel's
lots of
only been open. Yeah, the channel's only been open for a couple of weeks. So this was my
great.
first. You were not the only one nervous.
Yeah, so I think it went really well. But yes, if you want to have me back, I'd be more than happy to answer more questions.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thank you very much for your time. You have a great rest of your afternoon, and hopefully we'll get to see you again here on the channel.
Perfect. Great. We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you have questions that you'd like to see answered in future videos, please leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to get answers for you. If you liked this video, please make sure you click the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for future content.